Fr Mychal Judge. Victim 0001. September 11th, 2001. Everyone remembers where they were and who they were with. Take a moment to think about where you were. I was returning to work at Shannonside, Northern Sound after my lunch break. Driving in my car, I turned on the radio and it was about what was after happening in New York at the World Trade Center. When I arrived back at work, some members of staff were making their way to what was the TV room for the next several hours on the top floor beside the main broadcast studio. Pictures were being played and replayed of the planes hitting the World Trade Center. News reports were following the stories as the day unfolded before our very eyes.
New York City Mayor Rudolph Giuliani has confirmed that some of the first police officers and firefighters on the scene were killed.
The attacks killed 2,996 people and injured more than 6,000 others. The death toll included 265 on the 4 planes, from which there were no survivors. 2,606 in the World Trade Center and in the surrounding area, and 125 people at the Pentagon. There are no words to describe that Tuesday afternoon.
Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
Mychal Judge joined the Franciscans aged just 15. In 1958, 10 years after joining, he became a full member of the order, and in 1961 he was ordained a priest. In 1992, Mychal Judge was appointed chaplain to the New York City Fire Department, where he provided help and support to the firemen and their families, as well as encouragement and prayers at fires, rescues, and whatever situation he or those around him found themselves in.
Life and death. So valuable. And you wonder when my last half hour is going to be, or my last hour, what it'll be. Will it be doing something for someone, trying to save a life?
He said after his appointment as chaplain, "I always wanted to be a priest or a fireman, and now I am both." On Tuesday, September 11th, 2001, it was no different for this man, often referred to, even before 2001, as a living saint. While researching Fr Mychal Judge, I came across a video posted on YouTube by Glenside, PA. It was a video of the rededication of Engine 73, Ladder 42, and a mass which took place the day before 9/11 on September 10th, 2001. I was struck by these words during his homily.
And those of you who are working now, keep going. Keep supporting each other. Be kind to each other. Love each other. Work together. And do what you did the other night and the weeks and the months and the years before. And from this house, God's blessings go forth to this community. It's fantastic. What great people. You love the job. We all do. What a blessing that is. A difficult job. And God calls you to it, and He gives you a love for it so that a difficult job will be well done. Isn't He a wonderful God? Isn't He good to you? To each one of you. And to me. Turn to Him each day. Put your faith and your trust and your hope and your life in His hands. And He'll take care of you. And you'll have a good life. And this house will be a great, great blessing to this neighborhood and to this city.
When news broke of the attacks that the World Trade Center had been hit by the first two jetliners, Fr Mychal Judge rushed to the site. When he arrived, he was met by Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, the mayor of New York City, who became a very familiar face on TV at that time for all the great work that he was doing. The mayor said, "Fr Mychal, come with us." To which Mychal replied, "I can't. I've to stay with my men." The mayor said, "Pray for us, Mychal." To which Mychal replied, "I always do." Fr Mychal Judge prayed for a while over bodies lying on the street. And when he made his way to the World Trade Center North Tower, where an emergency command post had been set up, he entered the building and continued to offer his support and prayers to the rescuers, the injured and the dead. At 9:59 a.m, when the South Tower collapsed, debris went flying through the North Tower lobby, killing many inside, including Mychal Judge. I asked Lorna McCarthy, John Keeney and Jeanette Conifrey from Keshcarrigan, County Leitrim, where they were on September 11th, 2001.
I was up looking at the cattle, and when I came back down then, I went into the sitting room and my wife told me that big accident in America, 9/11.
Oh, I can very, very clearly, I can remember. How could we ever forget? It was coming in the news, it was coming in the television as it was happening. Like, we didn't believe it was, we thought it was a film first, because you could see the planes crashing into the buildings. We didn't think it was actually real. And until it came up in the news as it was, then the first plane, then the second plane, the third plane, and the one that crashed into the Pentagon. Like, it's etched in everybody's memory, that particular day.
I was at home, and actually we had been to New York the previous November, so Ground Zero, as it's called now, would be very familiar to us because we had been there as a family just the November previous, and it was an awful shock. I mean, it just came over the headlines, little bits and pieces, but as the day went on, as we know, disaster. And a lot of Irish relations were killed in it, and then of course our native really would be Fr Mychal Judge, whose family came from Keshcarrigan, and as a result of him, I suppose, being brought out as nearly one of the first people trying to help others, he was caught up in the whole disaster.
I'm with the Chief Fire Officer in Carrigan-Shannon, Finian Joyce. Finian, you can recall September 11th, 2001.
I can remember it distinctly, very well. It was a day that changed the lives of the fire service all around the world, not just in Leitrim or elsewhere, all over the world. It has had a profound effect on the way fire services operate, and has brought the risk that firefighters face to a new level.
So I was watching it for 10 minutes, and the next thing I seen, Fr Mychal being carried out. That I don't want to see. And my wife said, that couldn't be, but it happened to be Fr Mychal. I just seen him that particular time.
And that was the image that we all got to see, a famous image from 9/11.
All over the world, yeah. That was it. I knew his hair, the way his hair was combed back, and he was all dust on him, but I knew by his features that it was Fr Mychal.
How soon was it that it dawned on you that this was the man that had met your husband?
It didn't initially, and it didn't for a while. I can't remember when I made the connection, but as the news of the victims started to come in and the names, I think at that stage then we made the connection that Fr Mychal had a connection with Keshcarrigan, and his father was originally from it.
Shortly after his death, his body was removed by 5 men who made their way through the rubble. Mychal Judge was laid before the altar of St. Peter's Catholic Church before being taken to the medical examiner. Noel McPartland.
I mean, when you look back on 9/11, and I was over there about a month after that, and I visited the little church where he was taken to when he was taken out of that firestorm, you know.
Father Judge was designated Victim 0001 and recognised as the first official victim of the attacks. Although others had died before him that day, Father Mychal's body was the first recovered and identified formally by NYPD detective Stephen MacDonald. The examiner's report said that Father Mychal Judge had died of blunt force trauma to the head. Father Judge was only 68 years of age. He helped the homeless, the poor, and anyone he could. Father Mychal Judge visited Keshcarrigan the year before he died in 2000. What can you tell us about Father Mychal Judge?
Well, I didn't meet him personally, but my husband met him. He was walking up the village and Father Mychal was rambling around. He met him and he asked him, did he know where the Judge homeland was? But Brian, that was my husband, he didn't. So he went on about his business, and I presume after that he met John Keeney, and John had all the information that he needed.
The first time he came to Ireland here, he was looking for the home place, and he arrived here at my house at around 5 o'clock, and he was looking for the judges. Did anybody know where the judges lived? And I said, you're in the right house. I have the home place. Oh, that's great news, he says. Couldn't believe it. So he said, will you ring me up to the house to see the house, homestead? Sure, I ring him up, Shabbat him up. It was getting, near duskus. And he looked at I said, there's one wall there that's belonging to the original house. The rest of it is new. So he looked at that and he took a photograph of it, and I seen him rubbing the stone to get a bit of a pebble out of it. And he took a little pebble and put it into his pocket. So he was delighted. I'd say same as he won the sweep. If I won the sweep, I wouldn't be as proud as that, with that pebble he had that he put into his pocket. So I brought him down then here to Keshcarrigan and made tea for him. What happened when he was so late here, he came from Cove, he went to Mayo, he thought it was over in Mayo, the house, whatever mistake he made. So it took him nearly the whole day to come here, but he was late. I made tea for him. I knew he was a priest, all right, but didn't take much notice. So that's 20 years ago, yeah.
So that would have been his first time to be there?
Yeah, that'd be his first time to be in the homestead. He said that, yeah. That he never was up in the homestead before that, no.
And after that then, you became good friends, yeah, and you wrote to each other?
Wrote to each other now, yeah. He wrote regular. He wrote, the first unusual thing happened. The first letters he sent and a few bits of books, he put John Flynn in it, because he asked my wife what her name was, to see where she came from probably. Her father's name was John Flynn, and when he addressed the envelope, he said John Flynn Keshcarrigan. There was no side of John Flynn. So it was 2 months went by. I was wondering he didn't maybe send a letter or something. You know, it was 2 or 3 months, 2 months at least. The next thing, it arrived. He got it back. It was sent back to him by what? It was his own address on the back of it, seemingly. So he sent, next time he put the note in, says what happened. It went astray to John Flynn.
Over that 12-month period, you would have exchanged a few letters?
A few letters with him, yeah, a few letters with him now, yeah. I wasn't talking to him now, but letters he sent them a few times now, you know. And he said he sent more books than that, but... And at 2 or 3 different times he sent bits of papers and that.
And he spelt his name Mychal, and a little bit different, that too.
That was correct, because there's too many Mychals in the clergy he was in, or they spelt their name that way. There was 3 Mychals, I think, in where he was. So he decided he'd change it, that he'd have a different name, and the correspondence wouldn't get mixed up, you know. Every Mychal was getting another man's literature. So Mychal decided, and he stuck with that all his life.
When he was in your company, or through letters, what would he say about this area?
Well, the night he came here, now he stood for a couple of hours, He had a good feed, he was fairly fit. Because all he drank the whole day was 2 bottles of water. They never went to any restaurant. They wanted to get to see the homestead. That was his cry. So he said he never took aid, only the 2 5-gallon bottles of water, that, till he came here. So he had the chips and we had a good crack at him. He was very, very, very jolly man. He was very with it. But the one thing in particular I know about him was that when he was leaving, myself and the wife went out to say goodbye to him. And we waved at him. So the driver was driving off. So he says, turn the car back. He says, turn around. That's a sure sign of an Irish welcome. Because most houses when you go to now, he's in the priest. Any priest that goes to the house, they close the doors gently and say, thanks be to God, he's gone. So that happened now.
Francie Gilmartin let her find Keshcarrigan. What can you tell us about Father Mychal Judge?
Father Mychal Judge was born on May the 11th, 1933. His twin sister Dimna was born 2 days later. And he was christened Robert Emmett Judge, but when he joined the Franciscans, they changed his name to Mychal. He spent his life, even when he was a young child or young gossoon, he walked a long journey to serve Mass every morning, walk back and then walk to school. But he had his ambition all the time to be a Franciscan. He did that. He worked with the people with AIDS, the underprivileged, the homeless. He really spent his life helping people, and he felt that he was really at home when he was working with the firefighters.
His father was Mychal Judge, born in Keshcarrigan, and his mother, Mary Fallon, a native of Drumkieran in County Leitrim. Mychal and his twin sister Dimna and their older sister Erin grew up during the Great Depression in America. Their parents met on the boat while travelling to America in 1926, and they got married in St. Michael's Church, Brooklyn. Mychal's father died when he was just 6 years old.
They all probably came from the Kesh area originally, but Tom Judge was a small farmer, and his wife did teas for a fair day and all that, you know. A great, lovely woman. And she had 2 daughters. Eileen still lives in Dublin, and Frances is married in Boston. There were just the 2 kids in it, but they had other relations out in Kesh. But that's where Father Mychal came from.
He sent me a St. Patrick's Day card, and it's very simple, but it's true. And the words were on it: may there always be work for your hands to do. May your purse always hold a coin or 2. May the sun always shine on your window pane. May the rainbow be certain to follow the rain. May the hand of a friend always be near you. And may God fill you with heart and gladness and cheer you. It's a very simple one, but every man got that. I think if you had all what he said there in a simple word, I think it'd be better than winning the sweep. Any man that ever won the sweep, they never were happy. I think if you had them few messages there, you'd be better off.
And he has a title here, An Irish Blessing for You on St. Patrick's Day.
But I'm sure he'd like to send it to everyone in Ireland.
Glory, glory to America. Glory to the land that we love. Glory to the ones that have fallen. Pray their souls are safely up above.
You've got an invitation here for the White House.
Yeah, he sent that. It's unusual. He went at the White House and he had an invitation. And when he was at the White House, up at the White House, he was at the top table. He was a bit of a good humoured man. They were all shaking hands with him. Even the president was shaking hands with him. The whole lot, everyone up there at the top table was shaking hands with him. And he says, how do you know? He wrote that down to me in an article. How would they know? My name was Mychal. And everyone, someone showed up. Sure, everyone knows Father Mychal. You know, that was one simple thing, like, you know.
When Mychal Judge's funeral was held, many attended, including Bill and Hillary Clinton, who gave a eulogy on the day.
Yeah, that showed that it showed the esteem that Father Mychal was gotten in America when you had someone like Hillary Clinton taking part in his funeral.
Your Eminence, members of Father Mike's family. My husband and I first heard of Father Mike during the White House years. We kept hearing about this charismatic Franciscan. What a beacon of light. He lit up the White House as he lit up every place he ever found himself.
The most important thing we have belonging to Father Mychal that anybody has is the flag that was over his casket. It's a fine, we have it in Keshcarrigan. Nobody else in the world has it.
His sister said that she felt that the place to leave that flag, that where her brother would want that flag, was in Keshcarrigan. And we have the honour, the Keshcarrigan Development Association has the honour of having that flag wrapped as the firefighters wrapped it, and they wrap it in a special way. And it's lovely to have that because I feel it's really part of Mychal.
Wiper in the summer where some people could look at it.
That's the flag that would have draped his coffin.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the most important thing, yeah. Those millions looking at it. So everybody's seen it, but maybe nobody knows now, bar a few around here, that the flag is here. The original flag is over his coffin.
He felt as much Irish as he did American. And it was nice to see a man with Leitrim ancestors working so hard and helping so many hundreds and thousands of people in America.
Mychal's prayer. Lord, take me where you want me to go. Let me meet who you want me to meet. Tell me what you want me to say. And keep me out of your way. In Keshcarrigan, County Leitrim, there's a bench and peace garden dedicated to Fr Mychal Judge. The memorial site is on the shore of Kesh Lake on donated land once owned by the Judge family. John Keeney now explains how the Mychal Judge Memorial Peace Garden in Keshcarrigan, County Leitrim came about.
Oh, my father bought the home place for £300. My father was the second buyer, 35 acres.
And that's probably going back to maybe the 1950s, would it be?
It would be, at least going back to that, yeah. Looking at what happened was then my father sold the piece where Father Mychal's monument is done, sold it to the council for fishermen.
And they very kindly gave us that piece of ground.
So the local development, Kesh development, decided that start up, maybe get a bit of funds.
We got funding from the Peace and Reconciliation, and from there things took off. 2005 it was finished, and the invitations went out to his sister in America and various other dignitaries.
Without praising myself, I one man that said we'd have to put up a monument to him, come to me in the house and all that I had correspondence from, and I couldn't see it letting it go, So I decided we'd put up a monument, we'd even put up a big stone, a slab maybe.
And Smiths and Ballamore done a lovely seat. It all seemed to come, from once we talked about it, it's something that seemed to come together easier than a lot of things that we tried in Kesh.
Only that I was so much involved, I suppose, maybe, with him and talking to him. Maybe not, but it's unlikely now that it'd be done that quick, because I had the correspondence with him and talked to him, and that was it. That's the reason, part of the reason. But Kesh Development done good work, they've done a lot of work on it. And
to this day, it's still lovely and will be, because people enjoy it for different reasons, go to it for the peacefulness, but also we have people have weddings and have photographs taken at it, and we have a lovely seat which we erected, did a lot of fundraising for it. We got a little bit of money from Leitrim County Council, and we did several events to be able to put it there. And it's a beautiful tarmacked area, lovely seating, lovely flowers. As I said, very peaceful. It's right on the shores of Keshcarrigan Lake.
I think it's very, very nice because the lake is in front of it, and you see two swans usually there, or maybe other birds, but swans is usually there swimming around getting a bit of food, and you'd see the two swans in the water, and when you look out it looks very peaceful with the birds in the lake. And the lake, if you had a lake there now, you'd be looking at maybe nothing, But I think at the lake it's very nice now.
It took about 6 months to, it was just a field, and it had to be developed into a garden, and there had to be a car park. It's a place of an oasis of peace and tranquility, and as it's on the shores of Kesh Lake, so it is a very peaceful place anyway. And of course then the American flag, the Irish flag fly together, which sort of adds an attraction, and people coming along the road can see that, and they'll stop and stay for a few minutes and go about their business.
So we can see here the Kiltubrid notes, Father Mychal Judge. This is from the 10th and 11th of September 2005. Father Mychal Judge Memorial and Peace Garden. Today, Sunday, the 11th of September 2005, Keshcarrigan Development Association will unveil a memorial and dedicate a peace garden near the village to the memory of Father Mychal Judge, the first official casualty of the September 11th terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers, New York, in 2001. The event will commence at 3 p.m. with a walk from the village to the garden on the Mulvihill Road overlooking Kesh Lake.
We brought luck on because we played the championship, the Kiltubrid. After that, if you see it here, as you know, Kiltubrid was playing the next Sunday, the county final. We never won a senior championship, so he must have prayed for us. The next Sunday we were playing and we won it, won the county final.
That was against Barnacoola.
That's Barnacoola. He must have been looking down on us, I think.
That's right, yeah. So we were really on a roll, I suppose. The whole parish was on a roll because we had several different events that went in our favour, which is nice.
And on that day, did many people turn up?
Oh, there was a big crowd. The whole Kesh was, I don't know, many hundred of us there now. Jeanette McEwen had a beautiful car with the hood pulled back, and like what you see in Dallas.
As it happened, the two-seater was perfect because the sun shone down. I think Father Mychal was probably looking on us because even in Ireland, as we know, you can get lots of wet days. So I think he looked down on us for the day. We were able to have the roof down, and we had the car with lovely red, blue and white ribbons on it. And it was both poignant but lovely in both respects.
Oh, the whole road from Keshcarrigan now to up to the mine was full packed.
The weather was very bad coming up to it, but on that particular day it was a beautiful day. We had been praying for good weather and we were rewarded with a beautiful day. And there was Mass in the morning. It was concelebrated by Father Mychal's, he was his successor from the New York Fire Service, Father Chris Keenan, and our local priest, Father Seamus McEwen. Then at 3 o'clock there was a procession from the village. It was led by Dimna, which was Father Mychal's sister.
And Dimna travelled with me, which was lovely. So we did a parade really from the village of Keshcarrigan, and we led it. Dimna and myself led the parade. And then we were followed by the fire brigade from Leitrim Fire Brigade, any of the members that could be there. And she was very proud of it.
Carrigan Shannon Fire Brigade brought out all the equipment they had to show it as a sort of a, gesture.
That, of course, would have been a big part of Father Mychal's life, chaplain to New York City Fire Department.
Yeah, that was his fire brigade was really important.
And we had a nice memorial where our chief fire officer, Finney and Joyce, arranged that the firefighters from Leitrim came out, and we had a lovely service. And when the special years comes, hopefully we'll do more of that.
Finian, when you started in this position in Carrick-on-Shannon, it was around the time of the first anniversary of the 9/11 attacks.
It certainly was. I started a year to the day after the 9/11 attacks, and my first job when I joined the fire service here in September 2002 was to organise a commemoration event to honour the memory of the 9/11 tragedy, because there were a group of American firefighters visiting in Carrick-on-Shannon, and I was approached by them to ask if it would be appropriate to organise a little commemoration. And that was the first undertaking of mine when I took up the job as Chief Fire Officer.
And I suppose since then there's the Mychal Judge Memorial Peace Garden, and it wasn't there then, but it is now.
Yes, that's a development that took place a few years later, I think in 2005, and we were very proud to be associated with the local community in Kesh, with whom we had connections, and we were delighted to take part in that commemoration. And we had a number of our fire officers from all over the county who attended on the day and who met Father Mychal's two sisters, and we dedicated and unveiled the plaque and so on that's out there at the moment. And it was a very special day, and to think that we honoured one of Leitrim's own in Father Mychal, who had connections with the county. It was one of those days that I'll always remember, and I'm honoured to have been part of that commemoration.
Yeah, and we heard at the start of the programme, when we were recalling little bits of his life, how he always wanted to be a priest or a fireman, and he was both. And during your job, it takes you on your travels and different things. And recently you were telling me you met a man who worked alongside Father Mychal Judge.
Yes, certainly. I have travelled a good bit, and I have travelled to New York, and I visited all the firehouses in New York in 1995, 6 years before the tragedy occurred. And I visited those in the company of Terry Cullen, who was a relation of my wife's, but whose family originally came from Coolagrain in Leitrim. And he was very proud to show me around all the firehouses in Lower Manhattan, who would have responded immediately to that call. I visited Father Mychal's commemoration at Ground Zero in 2014, and he was the one person I looked for when I went to visit Ground Zero, and I saw his plaque at Ground Zero, and I got a photo taken, and I still have that to this day. Just a month ago, I met the Deputy Fire Chief of New York, George Healy, who has strong Irish connections, and he knew Father Mychal very well, and he recounted so many stories of Father Mychal's goodness and kindness to all the fire department personnel that worked there with him at the time, and they looked up to Father Mychal. You know, it wasn't always firefighting tactics they were talking to him about. It was to do with maybe personal problems they had or difficulties in coping with the stresses of the job. But Father Mychal was one they looked up to and turned to for advice and counselling and support when they had problems.
And that would have been the role that he would have played within the fire department. Would that be a role that all fire departments would have?
We all have different systems to help our firefighters cope with the stresses and the trauma that they come across on the day-to-day job. And yes, they do, unfortunately, have to deal with some horrific things at times. But we're fortunate as well in this county. We would call upon the clergy, particularly around the time when we would get a new station or a new fire engine delivered to the county. We would always call on them to come and bless the station or the new fire engine before we went out on the run. So there is a strong bond there always between ourselves and the clergy, who would support us on occasion.
George Healy, Deputy Chief Fire Officer with the New York City Fire Department, now talks to us on how he got to know Father Mychal Judge.
I became a New York City fireman back in 1991. Roughly 3 years later, in 1994, there was a very tragic fire in New York that I operated at. Actually, in a twist of fate, because of staffing, I had worked in Ladder 5 on the day tour, and then later on in the evening, there was a fire that Ladder 5 operated at, and 3 of their members got very critically injured that evening. Quite often, I'd meet Father Mychal at the hospital, and he was just one of those persons that you were easily drawn to. He was a priest, but he was just a real down-to-earth human being and man, and really had a deep love and connection to the fire department. And he was always that person that could cheer you up, that could put a smile on your face, that had that Irish charm and wit about him, but he was a friend. He was a comrade. He was somebody that was, from the fire department's perspective, somebody in the trenches with us, and he was with us on our good days. He was with us on our worst days, and he stood with us at churches. He stood with us at funerals, and like I always said, the worst day for the New York City Fire Department was certainly 9/11, and it's not shocking to me that he stood with us that day also. He certainly was proud of his faith. He certainly was proud of his membership in the FDNY, and he certainly was proud of his Irish heritage.
Michael Daly came from New York. He was a journalist with the New York Daily News. There was Lieutenant Liam Coleman. He was New York Fire Department's representative. Jonathan Benton, who was representing the US Ambassador in Ireland. We got as far as the garden. There was a ceremony there. Francisco Martin was councillor. He addressed the multitude of people because there was hundreds of people there. There was tribute from John Keeney, Finney and Joyce, Jonathan Benton, Father Chris Keenan, and Dimna unveiled the seat. Lieutenant Coleman placed a photo of Captain Brown, who was a colleague of Father Mychal. They were always together, sitting outside the New York Fire Service building. And I placed the flag which came off his casket the day he was buried. Eleanor Shanley sang Hard Times. Then there was various presentations made to Dimna. There was commemorative flags to Dimna from Father Chris. Lieutenant Coleman was made a presentation by Finney and Joyce. There was CD by Dick McDonough that was presented by Gerard Conifrey to Dimna. There was various pictures and poem, Remember the 11th, by Anne McCabe, who was the widow of Jerry McCabe and a member of the Irish Peace Institute. And then Dimna planted an Irish oak tree, which is to remember him by.
On that day when you were driving Dimna, did she talk about her brother?
Yes, she did, and she was both sad, naturally, because of the way his life ended so tragically, but still, in her own way, so pleased to see that people were remembering him. And he had a lovely prayer that he always said, and we did little flyers on it and gave them out to everybody on the day. And we had a lovely video recorded of the day, and a little booklet. And yeah, she was very proud of him, and of course she was. He was her sibling, so I mean, you lose somebody belonging to you, it's not very nice, and so tragically it was a huge disaster in her life.
I myself think that Father Mychal Judge, I know he's dead, but I feel that he's still around where his ancestors came from. And I think if you could hear him, I'd say he'd be thanking the people of Keshcarrigan for doing what we did for him.
Is there anything that you think could be done to add to the garden?
At the moment, access from the village is not great on account of the road is very narrow, and there are no pavements, so you have to walk very carefully out that road. There's a few very bad bends on it. So yeah, I think priority would be to have a pavement put in from the village up as far as the garden.
And that could be something that would add to it, and I suppose people visiting the village then by boat or anything like that who might be staying locally, they can then walk freely out there and safely.
Yes, we get a lot of people off the boats into the village, and obviously they're walking, and it would make it much easier to access, would be much easier up as far as the garden, if they wanted to visit it.
And there is one other thing that I would like to suggest, maybe for in advance of the 20th anniversary of 9/11, is that not alone should we honour Father Mychal, but that we should also honour all the other firefighters with Leitrim connections that died in 9/11 as well, and maybe incorporate that as part of the Peace Park out in Kesh.
And there's calls at the moment for Father Mychal to be a saint.
Yeah, I heard that he's passed he's passed the first two stages. and he has to pass the third. Now, what exactly that is now, I wouldn't know now. But he has passed 2 of them, and that they reckon that he will be canonised as saint. So it'll be unusual, or will it be a great thing to see a saint in Keshcarrigan, the first saint ever, I presume. I didn't hear tell of him. So it'll be a big thing in Keshcarrigan, I think, if he's made a saint.
I think that when enough of people sits on that seat and prays to Father Mychal, I think that there will be definitely, I feel myself, that there will be some miracle that Father Mychal will become a saint. Father Mychal was a walking saint, and it didn't change. He's dead now, but he was a saint while he was alive, so we know he's a saint. They can canonise him or do whatever they do, but I feel myself that Father Mychal is a saint anyway.
But I honestly look at him, people, Catholics and Protestants, they're all different. It's the work he done for the people. I always called him a man of the people, and that's the important thing. Not just, he wasn't Catholic or bitter or anything like that. He looked after everybody, and that's the whole lot that he brings off. And if he's made a saint, he'll be made a saint for a man of the people, I think.
Possibly you could imagine something like the patron saint to fire departments.
Well, you could, yeah. Be a nice gesture, it could be.
I would love to be able to support that, and to think that a person with Leitrim connections would be honoured in that way. I am aware that the patron saint of firefighters is St Florian at the moment, and that commemoration of that day is the 4th of May, I think, is the annual date when St Florian is remembered. But I would love to support the concept of or the idea of Father Mychal being made a saint.
Because it's a big thing now, because 9/11 is known all over the world, so we have a lot to think about all right here. That the man that his father came from, his family came from here, so we have definitely a big addition now.
When you were shaking hands with him that time, did you ever think that you could be shaking hands with a saint?
No, he's very humble now, all right. I definitely was. I'd say so.
In my eyes, he was a walking saint, and I would find it very appropriate at some point if the church recognized his devotion to the FDNY and his devotion to his faith and his God, and the work that he did for humanity.
Funny enough, I up to the land every day, and I see Father Mychal's headstone, because the cattle are there. So I'm the only man that's seen it that goes up every day since he died. I park the car right beside it. See the monument every day now, you know.
He was a lovely man. He loved Leitrim. He spent his life helping people, and he died helping people.
This lady that came over from Virginia, her name is Patty Figliola. She's very big into history and that. But when she came over the first time, she mentioned Father Mychal Judge, and I took her out to Keshcarrigan, and I showed her it, and she saw the American flag was a bit tattered, and when she came back next year, she brought them back a whole new American flag. And Lorna McCarthy and Keshcarrigan, she actually arranged a great reception for her, and we had a piper there that day, I remember, and the flag was given to them, and they still have that flag now. That's the American flag, and it's a very nice little memorial park there, you know.
In 2015, a statue was dedicated to Fr Mychal Judge at St Joseph's Park in East Rutherford, New Jersey, across the street from St Joseph's Parish, where he served for several years. It's worth noting also that at the National 9/11 Memorial, Fr Mychal Judge is remembered at the South Pool on panel S18.
One of the things that Stephen McDonald did after 9/11 with a bunch of folks was they started a march from Michael's Parish that they do on the Sunday before 9/11 every year, and they say a mass and the rosary in the parish, and then they march down to the Trade Center, and they stop at various police stations and firehouses along the way and pray and say parts of the rosary.
Every September 11th, there's a Mass in memory of Father Mychal Judge in Boston, attended by many who lost family members on that day.
Finian, also when you were in America at one stage in Atlanta, you took part in a commemoration.
Yes, I did. I was at an International Association of Fire Chiefs meeting in Atlanta, and it was around the time of the 11th of September in, I think, 2010. And at that stage they were organising a commemoration of 9/11, and hundreds of firefighters, and I joined them, took part in a climb of 104 stories high of a building to commemorate the actual journey that those firefighters took on 9/11 in trying to save the lives in the Twin Towers on that particular day.
And not alone that, but you were in full uniform.
I was in fire kit doing that, and you wouldn't believe that it took an hour and 40 minutes to climb 104 floors on the day. But it was a tremendous feeling to think that we were remembering all those who had died on that particular day.
Francie now recalls the other names with Leitrim connections who lost their lives on September 11th, 2001, along with Father Mychal Judge.
Joanne Cregan, whose family was from Mulvihill. There's Christopher M. Duffy, whose family was from Keshcarrigan. There's John F. Hefferman, whose family was from Clune, worked with the fire service. Michael J. Lyons, whose family was from Ahafas, worked with the fire service. Dennis P. McHugh, whose family was from Ahafas, also worked with the fire service. Joseph Spur's family from Carrigalan, who worked with the fire service. And then you have Fardell P. and Sean P. Lynch, whose family came from Kiltar. They all was people from Leitrim that died.
Glory to America, glory to the land that we love, glory to the ones that have fallen, pray their souls are safely up above. Glory, glory to America.
I'd like to thank you for listening to this programme and wish you all a happy new year. Don't forget to follow my Twitter page @Mike's Powerplay for further updates on documentaries I'm working on.